Immortals among us. Dive into a story where you will enter into the secret magic world where immortals, the children of the old gods, pose as mortals that masquerade as witches in Paul Leson's captivating novel Immortals Among Us, Life as a Human. As the main character navigates through two worlds, Earth and the mystical shadow. The main character is doing okay until his girlfriend is abducted. A clash between good and evil begins and love then rises from out of the depths. Drama ensues and a mortal who wishes to join the ranks of the immortals gets thrown into the mix. This tale of magic, suspense, and romance showcases Paul's storytelling brilliance, offering readers an enchanting escape into a realm where the extraordinary becomes reality. A must-read for fantasy enthusiasts. Did I mention that there are dragons too? Anyone who is a fan of Paul's writing can tell you that reading his work is like sitting by the fire pit and having someone tell you a story. Paul likes to look at himself as a storyteller more than anything else.
There's a touch of madness around here.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, people. From my dark basement in a ghostly haunted dwelling, this is Paranormal Proximity, and I am your host, Paul Leson. So today, who I have with me is Al Santariga. He is known as the Squatch God. Very interesting person, and I think you guys are going to like the show. Anyway, we're going to jump right into this, and he has been published in several different magazines and news articles and so on and so forth. That's what got him on here. And I've had him on my show several times. So I doubt this is only going to be a half-hour show. It's probably going to be much longer. Hey, Al. What up, my man?
Hey, Paul. What's going on? Yeah, I got a couple of different nicknames. Al X-Files, Santariga was an old one. The Squatch Father. And now Brian has given me a new one. The podcast, the Podfather, because he says I do so many podcasts. I'm the Podfather now. But yeah, I just go by Al. So anybody can just call me Al. So Paul and I go way back, and we've done a lot of stuff together and talked about a lot of things. And yeah, I've been published in a bunch of different magazines and novels and newspapers and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell him what they are. He's been in New York's Outdoor News magazine. He's been
now that particular one was for my Bigfoot presentation I did. The reporter was in the audience, and after the presentation, he came up to me. He found it very interesting. And he asked me if he could interview me, and I said absolutely. And we discussed all kinds of stuff regarding Bigfoots being seen by train conductors going up and down the Hudson River, the Hudson River track. People fishing on the Hudson River, seeing Bigfoots on the banks of the Hudson River. Hunters, seeing them in the woods with them hunting, and a whole bunch of different things. And it was all about, outdoor wilderness and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's also been in the Times community newspaper of the Hudson Valley.
That particular one was when the first time I did the Pine Bush UFO Fair. They were just starting out with the Paranormal Center, and they ran a nice big 2-page article on me and the team and all, because they were branching out from just UFOs to paranormal as well. And they did a nice article on me there. And we knocked it out of the park at Pine Bush. Yeah.
And in the Gothamist internet newsletter.
Yes.
Yeah, what the hell's wrong with me today? I can't talk.
The Gothamist was another one that reached out to me. We were doing a Dogman presentation at the Pine Bush UFO museum, and they had reached out to me to come up there and do a Dogman presentation. And of course, when we were done doing the Dogman presentation, again, the reporter was in the audience, and he told me who he worked for, and he wanted to run an article on us. And I said, absolutely. And he wrote that up, and it was a nice article. Again, it was in the internet, an internet article, and it was all about the Dogman stuff. So that was pretty interesting.
And you were also featured as you've got an author piece in a book, Paranormal Family and Friends.
That was my brother. My brother Frank wrote a book, Paranormal Family and Friends, and he reached out to me for some experiences, and I gave him 3 separate experiences that he could use. One was a UFO sighting up in Connecticut in '85, which the UFO came out of the sky, was the size of the Roman Colosseum. And not only did I see it, but 100 other people in the parkway seen it. State troopers seen it. They flew 2 Air National Guard F-15s or whatever they were out of Bridgeport Air National Guard to try to intercept it, but couldn't find it. Another one was the 1974 incident down in South Florida with the Bigfoot incident, where the Bigfoot ripped the head off of a Brahma bull.
Right.
And he got he validated that through my sister, who was a witness at the time, and the BFRO did an incident report on me with that as well. And the third one was a ghost thing. Was a ghost thing that actually happened in his house.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I was living in his attic apartment, a beautiful attic apartment, and he had this creepy little door, in the living room. And when we were setting up the living room, I said, I'm going to put my couch up against that door because, that was a creepy little door. And I would hear like toys going off in the middle of the night when I was sleeping, and I would hear kids giggling and stuff like that. And I would tell him about it, like, Frank, what's going on with this house? And he ended up doing some research on the house after I moved in, and the whole family was in there. My parents were in the basement, and he had the 2 floors in between, and I had the attic. And he ended up doing some research and found out that not only through like research, but through the people in the neighborhood that had been there for 30, 40 years, the people who had bought the house originally had 2 handicapped children, and they put them up in the attic in this little creepy room with toys, and they locked them away so that none of the neighbors would see them, because I guess back in the old days they were embarrassed of having handicapped children and stuff. And so eventually I said, okay, well, I gotta get this stuff out. I pulled the couch out away from the door, and I opened up the door, and my brother and I were too big to get in, but my father, who had been stricken with cancer, was pretty skinny at the time. And we sent my father into this little crawl space, and he went in and he found like 2 dog beds that the kids slept on, and we pulled them out, and all kinds of dolls and toys, but none of them had like batteries in them, But at night,
worked anyway.
I would hear them go off at night. Yeah, no, they didn't work with us, but at night when I was trying to sleep in that room, you would hear children giggling, you'd hear a fire truck, you'd hear a little doll talking. It was crazy. I mean, they were harmless children, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they were just playing with their toys. But the first time my wife slept over and she experienced that, she was like, I'm never coming back to Connecticut ever again. We were just dating at the time. She's like, I'm out. I'm not coming back here anymore. And that's what made me want to clean that little thing out. But even after we cleaned it out, it still continued, the children's spirits were still there.
Yeah.
And I guess the toys they were still playing with in their realm was still with them. It was a crazy little thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're all in their own little space. So
they're all in their own little space. Yeah, so it didn't matter that we took the toys out of that little crawl space and the beds and everything. They were still there, I guess. At night when it was time for them to go to bed, I guess that's where they put them.
Yeah, they're probably still there too.
Yeah, they're probably still there. They were probably there during the day as well, but I wasn't there. I was working, and so I wasn't home to,
Yeah,
experience anything. To be honest, yeah.
you're too busy delivering the mail.
No, back then I was doing ceramic tile.
Oh, you were doing ceramic tile back then. I thought you
Yeah.
were a mailman back
Not
then.
no, that wasn't a
At,
mailman yet. No, I was still
okay.
doing. I was still doing contracting work. Yeah.
And you were also in another book called Case Files of the Paranormal
Yes.
Awakenings.
Richard Marcello gave me. Rich is a good friend of mine. He lives in Jersey. He does these incredible renderings when we're on like investigations. He'll do an incredible rendering of what he's seeing in his mind's eye of who we're dealing with, or if we're doing EVPs and we're having EVP sessions and stuff like that. And then what happens is people who are with us will go on the internet and research the location. And usually, I would say, well, every time I've been with Richard, he's like 10 for 10 with me when I'm with him, and he'll always find somebody in the archives of that location that looks like his rendering,
Right.
and it's like a psychic vision type thing. And he was doing a book on paranormal stuff, because he's more psychic than anything else, And he gave me a call one time, and we had a long discussion about, the paranormal and what I thought, how everything was connected. And I told him I felt like everything, not.
You there? We dropped you. I can't hear you. Oh, damn. Hang on a second. We're going to try to do this. Oh, boy. We got some problems here. What is this? Is this pause?
Richard. So I was telling Richard, I felt that everything was connected via consciousness, intention, vibration, frequency, stuff like that. I felt that's what was my opinion on how everything was connected,
Right,
and
right.
he was really interested in all of that stuff, and we were talking about it, and I believe he put it in the book as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are like the points where the things I would published in, and the reasons why they were published, and who published them.
Well, it sounds good. I know you've told me from time to time over the years, we had a little mishap there. Sorry, people, but things are all good now. Where I know Al, I met Al originally. He came on my show it must have been 10 years ago.
A long time, yeah.
It's been a long time ago that
Yeah.
you came on my show with a couple other people, and you telling me about Nuclear Lake and your paranormal experience there, where you heard Bigfoot knocks on trees, and you might have seen UFOs, and it was a 2-hour show that you didn't want to, you didn't want it to stop. So,
yeah, no, that was 2015. That was that was the Nuclear Lake investigation. It was Hallows Eve. It was a full moon. It was a meteor shower. Yeah, it was a crazy, crazy night. Absolutely, yeah. Well, everything that could have happened paranormally, and it's just nuts. Absolutely insane. Yeah.
Yeah, it was insane. It was nuts. And I believe I even got an EVP on my end of the show, because for people who don't know, I do live in a haunted house. And the latest thing that's been happening for the last week here is that when they want attention in the middle of the fucking night, they will pull a picture. They'll literally pull a picture that should not be able to fall off the wall. They'll pull it off, then it'll hit the floor. And it'll be a different picture every single time. That's what they've been doing here lately.
Yeah, no, I know your house is haunted. You've had a lot of different experiences in your house as well. Yeah, and my children say that my house is haunted as well. We hear upstairs in the dormer, which was an add-on. We hear at night. You'll hear what sounds like music coming from like a house party across the street. There was a time I was sleeping and I could have sworn the house across the street was having a rage, you know? And
Yeah.
I called the cops and I was like, listen, you better send someone over there to shut that music up. I got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And if I go there, I'm kicking that front door in and I'm blowing that radio up with my shotgun, you know, because I got to get up in the morning. The cops like, calm down. We'll send someone over. And then they send someone over. And next thing I know, there's a knock on my front door. And I go to answer it. And it's the sheriff. And he's like, what house are you talking about? And I'm like, that house right there. And he goes, dude, that house is buttoned up tight. The people who live there are snowbirds. They're in Florida. There's nothing going on there. And I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, I hear music all night long. And when we moved downstairs out of the dormer and just left the kids upstairs, my daughter had the same experiences in that same master bedroom. She would hear music all the time. As a matter of fact, we had to paint. We had a wall that was in front of the bed that was paneled. You know, it was a nice wood panel. We had to paint that panel because she said if she looked at it at night, she would see faces in it, and it freaked her out. And
well, I thought you guys were like the original owners of that place.
No, this house was built in the 50s. Yeah, no, we're not the original owners. Absolutely not.
What kind of music are you hearing? I mean, because
it sounds like, I don't know. It sounds like a mix between rock and rap. You know what I mean? Like sometimes
really,
you'll hear a heavy bass beat, you know, and sometimes it'll sound like it's rock and roll. It's weird, you know, and
that is weird, man. It's really weird because it doesn't fit the time period of the house.
No, the house was built in the 50s, and
you wouldn't hear rap from the 50s.
and the dormers was built in the 70s. Even then, it was before rap, you know. My son, who slept in the next room over, we have a walk-in closet that leads to a crawl space where we put all our Christmas stuff and everything. And he would go to bed every night, and he would wake up and the closets would always be open, and it freaked him out. He put locks on all the 4 closet doors. He put locks on them because he says tired of waking up and seeing the doors open in the morning. You know, it was just freaking him out. But downstairs, this is pretty interesting. Downstairs in the living room, I have this big mirror that my father found. My father was like he would find stuff on the street that he liked, and he would be in a carpenter. He would fix stuff up, and he found this huge mirror. I would say it's 3 by 5, and he put his beautiful, being a carpenter, he put a beautiful frame around it, you know. And I don't know where he got the mirror from. It's beyond me. But when he passed, I got that mirror and I got it in my living room. And there's been times, hand to God, that I'll be doing, when I used to do all my interviews downstairs when the kids were still in the house and I had to do everything downstairs in the dining room, there would be times where I would be doing an interview and orbs would fly out of that mirror. And they would stop right over my head and look at the person in the interview who's interviewing me and then fly out the window behind me. And the people who were interviewing me would freak out like, dude, did you just see what happened? And I would say, yeah, don't worry. It's going to come back later. And like 3 hours later or 2 hours later, it'd come back through the window again, stop and look to see who I'm talking to, and then go back into the mirror. And people would just freak out. Like, I've never seen an orb in my life except for in pictures, and you got them coming in and out of your mirror in your dining room. You know?
Didn't you know orbs are just dust? No.
Yeah, no. Well, some are dust, some are water. You know, molecules. Sure, there are different types of orbs, but when you're filming and the camera is filming, and the camera sees it come out of the mirror, and then stop and look, like it's looking at you, like I'm looking at you, and then decide, okay, this guy's not interesting enough. go out the bedroom, go out the
I
back
yeah,
window.
I always get a kick out of the people that say orbs are nothing more than dust, and it's like, okay, you haven't seen the right pictures then,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
the right videos. I will never forget the video I saw of the mouse in the mouse trap. You've seen this video
Yes.
where the mouse dies after the trap, closes on him, and he lays there for a second, and then this orb comes right up out of his body. And it's like,
Yeah.
don't tell me that's dust when it's going straight up and out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. As a matter of fact, that creepy picture I sent you with that girl whose eyes changed and that of it,
Yeah,
that invest. Me and my cousin Sean were in one of the rooms in the hotel where we were doing this investigation, the Shanley Hotel up in the Catskill Mountains, with this same young girl, and I felt that she had something attached to her. And we're standing there. I'm standing behind her. She's filming into the room, and Sean is standing on one side. I'm on the other. And this orb comes out of like a walk-in closet, and we're
yeah,
looking
right.
at it. We're looking at it on her camera. Can't see it with our own naked eye. Comes out of the closet, and it starts flying directly towards her. And as it flies towards her, she turns the camera around to see it, And
Yeah.
we walk behind her, and it flew out of the closet and right into her. And I was like, that wasn't no dust, because if that was dust, there should be dust all over this room.
And
You know what I
after
mean?
that, didn't you say her eyes changed?
Yes. Then we went down into the scribing room, and we were scribing, and my cousin and I went in first, and I felt what felt like a hand around my heart, squeezing my heart. And my cousin said, he was standing up. I was sitting down in a chair, and my cousin said, look in the mirror. Look where my eyes are. And when I looked in the mirror at his eyes, he had like two green marbles where his eyes were. But what I couldn't see from my angle that he could see was that his pupils had changed to almost like reptilian like.
Straight up and down.
Straight up and down. And then we went out, and she was waiting to go in after us. And she went in right after us. And then when she came out, she said, look at this picture I took. And she had taken a couple of photographs, and like 2 or 3 photographs she was taking. And in one photograph, her eyes were normal. And then the next photograph, her eyes were like clammed over, just like looked like soft boiled eggs. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I would
Just
show
creepy.
people the pictures that were taken, but I don't pay for StreamYard as of yet anyway. So I'm not able to do that yet.
No, I'm
Sorry.
just saying. I mean, that was pretty interesting. The only reason I brought her up is because we were talking about orbs, and we seen that orb fly out of the closet and
Yeah,
directly into her. It didn't. It made a beeline for her, like something was waving it in. It was
right.
crazy. Yeah, it was crazy.
So anyway, tell us the story of the Squatch God.
The Squatch Father. The
Squatch Father. I call you Squatch God. Everybody else is Squatch Daddy or Squatch Father.
Squatch Father. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what do you want? What do you want me to? Do you want me to talk about the one down in Florida in '74 where it ripped the bull's head off its shoulders? I mean, I've had a
Oh,
lot of.
I didn't hear about that one. You've never told me about this one.
I never told you about the one in
You never told me
1974.
about, no, you never told me about the bull getting his head ripped off by a Squatch.
Yeah, in 1974, my cousin Anthony and I would get sent to Florida every year. It was our summer camp. My sister had a house down there in a little town outside of Fort Lauderdale called Davie, Florida. It was a cowboy town. Biggest thing that happened was the rodeo on the 4th of July. Dirt roads, no sidewalks. They had back then. They had the chain gang still cutting the bushes in the swamps. These guys would be chained to next to it with sickles, cutting all the grass down in the swamp, the high grass in the swamp.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
people don't know what chain gang is. They belong to prisons, and they went out and did manual labor.
oh wow, okay, yeah, right. I didn't realize that. And the cops would be on their horses with their shotguns and their dogs, and it was crazy. It was like it was real cowboy country. She lived in a development that was 2 square blocks, 2 square miles, and it was surrounded by a swamp. and canals, and it was like one lane bridge to get over. And in the beginning of the development was a horse rancher who did tours out in the swamp. At the other back end, there was a cattle rancher, and we lived like in between them both. And my brother-in-law, who was an ex-Marine, he had an Italian restaurant down there. He would give us a list of chores to do every day, and we would get them as much as we could do by 1 o'clock, because after 1 o'clock in the morning in the summer down in Florida, it's just too hot to be outside, you know.
Right.
So we would bust our butts from 8 o'clock in the morning till 1, getting stuff done, and we did everything from cutting grass to popcorning ceilings and painting. You know, he had a lot of free manual labor with me and my cousin. But we had our own dirt bikes, and we knew all the kids in the neighborhood that we've been going down there for years, and we would hang out in the swamp, and sometimes we would shovel shit at the horse rancher's place to get some money for beer, and sometimes we would take tours out in the swamp if he didn't have anybody to take a tour out. Horses knew where they were going anyway. Just needed people, like one in the front of the tour and one in the back, just to make sure nobody got lost. And so one particular night, my cousin Anthony and I were sleeping in my sister's sunroom on a king-size bed, pull-out bed, giant picture window. And one night we're sitting there, and something goes by the house, and it smells to high heaven. Oh, she had two large German Shepherds, 125 pounds each, both K9 trained. And they went crazy, and I had to grab the dogs and throw them in the garage so they won't wake up the whole house. And in the morning, you know, we told my sister and my brother-in-law, I said, look, something came by the house like 3 o'clock in the morning, and it stunk to high heaven. You know, we couldn't breathe. The dogs went crazy. And my brother-in-law says, oh, you know, must have been a skunk ape. And me and my cousin look at each other like, skunk ape? Nah, I'm not buying this, you know? And he's like, yeah, you know, when it gets warm like this, the skunk ape comes around. And my sister's like, yeah, there's a thing called the skunk ape. And me and my cousin Anthony are like, what's the skunk ape? You know, what is this thing, you know? And she's like, it's like the Florida version of Bigfoot. And then we're laughing like, yeah, everybody knows Bigfoot's only in the Pacific Northwest, you know? That's what we thought as kids, you know?
Yeah, it is what we thought as kids.
Yeah. And we're laughing. So we go out and we start hanging out with our friends in the early afternoon, and we're talking to them. And the local kids are like, yeah, when it gets hot like this, the skunk ape comes around. Now, this particular summer in 74, there was a big drought down in South Florida, and the Everglades were on fire. So it was driving a lot of animals inland, you know?
Right. I remember that too.
And as the summer wore on, and would go on and on and on, you were starting getting reports from on the TV, the radio, the newspaper of these skunk ape sightings of people in town or cops or whatever seeing these things. And so we're like, wow, this thing is really real, you know? We couldn't believe it. So again, one night it's late, we're laying in bed, and the house had a 6-foot fence that went around the sides and the back, but the front was open with a circular driveway and a fountain in the middle, with sensor lights on all the corner. And we're laying in bed, and the sensor light goes off. This time it doesn't smell, though. And the sensor light goes off, and we see this giant shadow go across the wall in front of us. And we're like, oh, what the hell is this? The dogs go crazy. I jump out of bed. I grab the dogs. I bring them back in the garage, and I do a belly crawl to the window, and I'm peeking out the curtain from the bottom of the window to see what's out there. And 30 feet in the middle of the driveway is what looked like to me King Kong, standing in the middle of the driveway, looking at the picture window. Now, hindsight being 2020, I thought it'd seen me at the bottom of the window, but it probably seen its reflection in the glass, because it did this incredible Hulk kind of scream and flexed its muscles. And when it screamed, it went right through you. I thought like that picture window was coming down. This was a big picture window. It was like 4x8, you know? And we freaked out, me and my cousin. And then it started to go around the side of the house where there was a vacant lot, because there was a lot of vacant lots in the development, only, partially built up at that point. And so when it went around the side of the house, I dragged my cousin Anthony out of bed. And I said, come on, we'll go in the bathroom on the side of the house and see and check this thing out, see what it is, And we're sitting in the bathroom. We got the light off. It's got a tinted screen in front of us. The window is tinted. The screen is black. The lights are off. And we're watching this thing walk past the house. And it's head and shoulders above the 6-foot fence. That's why I get the height about 9 feet tall.
Yeah.
And I've always figured if you go 100 pounds per foot, it had to be no less than 900 pounds. And it's walking along the fence line. And of course, every time it passed the corner of the house, the sensor lights would go off. And it was black, but it had this red tinted hair to it, red highlights, a little tint, whatever you want to call it. It had red eyes, but I don't know if the red eyes were from the sensor lights hitting it in the face. It had a conical head. It was massive. It was 4 feet wide, and it looked like it was 4 feet thick, And it's walking along the fence line, and it stops at one point, and it grabs a wild watermelon, and it takes a bite of this wild watermelon, and it's got nothing left but 2 nubs. It just drops it, and it's walking towards the back. The whole time it's looking at us, like it could see us through that window. But we got all the lights off, we're ducking underneath the wall, thinking, and every time we pop back up, it would still be looking at us. So as it starts to go towards the back of the house, I grab my cousin. I said, come on. Let's go out to the screened porch. It's going to pass the back of the house. The lights are going to go on, And we run out to the back patio, the screened-in patio, and we're sitting against the screened-in patio up against the screen. And as it passes the back of the house, the lights went on again. And we got a good look at it. Walked all the way to the back of our property where it was a man-made lake, hunched down, drank some water out of the man-made lake, continued to look back at us like it could see us in the darkness. And it walked off into the swamp where we drove our dirt bikes and we had our bonfires and we had our parties, you know what I mean? And just would scream to high heaven, go absolutely nuts. So, next day we tell my sister, my brother-in-law what happened. We got all the kids in the neighborhood. We go outside along the fence line. There's like 18-inch foot tracks. They're like 18 inches long, 9 inches wide, a couple inches deep. And my brother-in-law's like, oh, man, I'm going to come home from lunch from the restaurant, and I'm going to cast these, and I'm going to put 2 up at the restaurant on a bar at the restaurant and 2 on the bar at the house for conversation when he had company come over. But he never came home. The restaurant got too busy. And then the horse farmer, the horse rancher, he had tours and they would always go by our house and they destroyed all the footprints and everything.
Yeah.
So that was one night. A few nights go by. It's been pretty quiet. Right after the 4th of July, I would say this is. And the great thing about Florida is it's flat. And if there's nothing in your way, you can see for miles. You know what I mean?
That's definitely true about Florida.
And where he gets home from the restaurant like at 1 o'clock in the morning with all these burnt pizzas. That was our midnight snack, burnt pizzas at the restaurant. He would bring them home. So me and him and my cousin Anthony and my sister are all sitting out on the patio eating this burnt pizza. And my brother-in-law asked, any action tonight? We go, no, pretty quiet. No sooner than we say that, we hear what sounds like a 30-30 going off. Bang, bang, bang. So we all run to the side of the house, and we can see towards the horse rancher, muzzle flashes, boom, 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 So he says, jump on your dirt bikes over there and see what's going on. So we jump on our dirt bikes and we ride across people's lawns and everything else. We've got to get there as fast as we can. We're not taking the road. We get down there. We see our buddy. His father is out there. And he's like, we go, what's going on? And he said, his father had just brought in this wild Mustang or stallion or whatever it was from like Wyoming or Montana. And he had it in the corral. And he had a Native American Seminole coming every day to work it, to break it.
Yeah.
Couldn't put it in the stalls with the other horses because they would kick it. It made all the other horses nervous.
Right.
This creature creeps up out of the swamp, out of the high grass, creeps up on this horse and grabs it by its hind quarters. Okay. Now, I don't know. This is just an assumption. The Native American kind of told us. He said the horse must have kicked the creature in the chest or something, because when the creature let go, the horse jumped the corral and got out into the pasture. The pasture was huge. And once it got out to the pasture, I guess this creature wasn't going to catch it at that point. And by then, the rancher was out, and he was blasting at the thing with the 30-30. The sheriff comes, and the guy's telling the sheriff what happened, bada beep, bada boop. And the next day we go down there, and the Native American rides out to the pasture to get the horse, and he brings it back. Again, now the sheriff, he calls the horse rancher calls the sheriff to come back.
Yeah.
When they brought the horse into the corral, the horse had handprints on its hindquarters.
Damn.
Not claw marks. Handprints. Like if I was to grab you by your wrist.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
And it was indented in the horse's hindquarters. And, like this guy's freaking out because he paid a lot of money for this horse, And he's like, look at my horse. It's got, it's damaged now. This damn creature. You got to start picking up the patrols out here. We're right on the cusp of the swamp, the Everglades, and we need more patrols here. And the sheriff's like, okay, we're gonna pick up the patrols in the neighborhood. Again, you got to understand, there was probably just a sheriff and a deputy in the town at that point. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a small town. There's not a lot of police, except for maybe the county and the state had a bigger force, of course. And so they start picking up the patrols. So one night, a couple of weeks later, my brother-in-law, my sister meet some friends from New York, and they take them out down in Miami, dinner and dancing the whole 9 yards. Me and my cousin were babysitting the kids, and they get home at 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And my brother just bought this brand new Lincoln Continental, like Mark IV. It was absolutely gorgeous, And they're getting out of the car, and we all open up the door, and my brother-in-law says, we're all standing around the car. The dogs are outside, and my brother says, any action tonight, And they're like, no, quiet. Everything's quiet, No, again, no sooner than we say that, we hear this horrific, blood-curdling scream. Nobody knew what this scream was. It was so wicked that it scared these 2 canine German shepherds that ran into the house because it was such a wicked kind of blood-curdling scream. My sister was petrified. She ran into the house after the dogs, and my brother-in-law said, come on, jump in the car. Let's see what's going on. So as we're jumping into the car, my cousin jumps in the passenger seat. I'm in the back hanging out of the sunroof. As soon as we jump in the car, we see a double-barrel shotgun blast. Boom! 2 barrels go off at once. So he goes, okay, we got to head over to the cattle rancher's house,
Right.
So we're driving up to the cattle ranch. So we get to our corner. We got to make a right. As soon as we get to our corner, the deputy passes us. They're doing a patrol. The deputy is on our side of the development. The sheriff is like a mile away on the other side of the development. All you see is his headlights. Now we're stuck behind the deputy. We're doing like 2 miles an hour. We're crawling. And the deputy is panning to his left because that's where the swamp is. And everybody's looking left. And I'm hanging out of the sunroof looking left. Everybody's looking left. When this creature runs out of the darkness from the right, and the deputy hits him with the police car. Boom. Looked like the police car hit a telephone pole. Okay.
I imagine so.
And the creature goes down and takes down like a school bus sign that's supposed to be like impossible to bend, like it's supposed to be able to handle 300-mile-an-hour hurricane winds. Well, He lands on this sign that he just pancakes it, just bends it over like a matchbook cover,
Right.
And gets back up, and he starts limping across the road. It's right in front of us. Now, my brother-in-law hits it with the high beam. So this thing is lit up, and I feel like everything is going in slow motion, like time is staying still. And I feel like I'm literally in front of because I'm outside the car. I'm hanging out the roof. And the thing looks down at the deputy in the car, and we can see his silhouette holding onto the steering wheel. And we can see the shotgun in between him and the passenger side, because that's where they carried it back then. They carried it in the cab of the car.
Yeah.
And this thing screams down at the deputy and does like a hammer punch. And when he hammer punches the front of this car, the back of the car comes off the ground. And we're like, oh my God. And it limps across off into the swamp. At this point, the sheriff is coming around the corner. He sees the car totaled in the middle of the road, puts his lights on, races down, says, what's happened? The deputy tells him what happened. He's like, why didn't you take the shotgun out and shoot it, you know? And he's like, no, the shotgun wasn't big enough, you know? The shotgun wasn't big enough. And he's taking our report, and we're basically telling him the same thing that the deputy told him what happened, you know, everything, you know, we're telling him all the same thing. And at this point, the cattle rancher comes racing up in his pickup truck, and he's cursing and he's screaming. And he's like, you got to come back to my ranch. You got to see what this creature did to my prize bull. Now, this dude had a white Brahma bull, okay?
Oh,
If
one
it-
of those. Yeah.
If
one of
it
those-
weighed 2,500 pounds, it weighed an ounce.
Yeah.
It had a hump in its neck. It was as big as a minivan, okay? This thing was a monster. Itself was a monster. And I know for how big it was, because I was being chased by, I used to jog the 2 miles every day. And one day this lady came home from food shopping, and she opened up her gate, and she had this St. Bernard, and the dog hated me. Every time I ran by the house, it would jump up on the fence and go crazy. She opens the gate, and the dog takes a beeline after me. I'm running for my life. There's no trees to climb. There's no place to go. And this dog is gaining on me. And I'm thinking I'm not getting eaten by Cujo. You know what I mean? And I'm coming up on the cattle rancher's house, and they got like a little 3-foot fence, 4-foot fence, the highest. Highest it was 4 foot. And the dog is gaining on me. And I just dive over the fence into the pasture, you know?
Right.
And when I get up, the bull is looking at me, but he's like 100 feet away from me. He's just looking at me like, what are you, you know? But I'm by the cows, and the cows are pretty big. These are big cows. I don't know if they were milk cows or beef cows, but these were big cows. And the dog is up on the fence going crazy, just barking. And the bull is looking at the dog, and he's looking at me, and he starts to walk towards the fence, towards the dog. And I'm using the cows. I'm hiding behind the cows to get out of the pasture, you know?
Yeah. What else are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm gonna put them between me and this bull. And at this point, the lady's calling the dog back. The dog goes back. I get out the side gate, and I head home. I jog home, and so I know how big this bull was. This bull was a beast. So the sheriff goes, okay, I'll follow you to your ranch. So we go around the deputy. We just leave him there dead in the water. We go around we follow the sheriff. We get to the cattle rancher's ranch, and we're behind the sheriff, and he's panning with his spotlight the pasture. And there in the middle of the pasture is this white Brahma bull bleeding out with no head. Just that. And then he pans like 100 yards, like in a different direction, and the head is on the other side of the pasture. Like this creature just ripped the head off this bull and threw it. You know what I mean? Like it was nothing.
Yeah.
And the cattle rancher is out of his mind, because I guess this bull must have cost him a fortune. You know?
No doubt, man.
Yeah, and he's losing his shit. And the sheriff is like, okay, I've had enough of this creature for tonight. We're going to call in everybody. And they called in the state. They called in the county. They came with horses. They came with dogs. They came with helicopters. And they searched high and low, up and down that swamp, through the canals. And they didn't find anything. They never found anything of the creature all night. We thought that news reporters were going to come to our house and take our interview us, because we were witnesses. And
Yeah.
we jumped in the car in the morning. My cousin was 15, so he was able to drive to Florida at 15. And we drove to the local Winn-Dixie, and we bought like every newspaper on a stand, thinking it was going to be in a newspaper. And there was nothing about it in the newspaper, and nothing on the news or the radio or TV, and no one came to the house. And we couldn't understand why. We were hearing about it all summer long, and something like this happened between the horse and now the bull, and nothing was ever reported on, and
so they just shut
buried
everybody
it.
up, and
Yeah,
they
just
bury
buried
it, and they keep
Yeah.
it quiet, and they don't tell anybody about it, and they look at you like you're stupid and like it doesn't exist. It's kind of like in New York State when people disappear in the national parks, and they don't even let you know people are disappearing in the parks, and where what's happening to them.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of different theories on what's going on with these people, but I mean, there is a federal agency that does keep track of missing people in the national parks, but it's not the National Park Agency, and it's not the FBI, who technically are supposed to investigate anything like that when it happens, because they're the park police technically, because they're the feds. But there are other entities that do document this stuff and do go out in a search and rescue or a search and destroy mission, whatever it happens to be. I'm lucky enough to have 3 nieces that work for national parks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they both tell me, all 3 of them tell me, when you get hired as a park ranger, and I don't mean just like summer help, I mean you have to have
permanent
school for biology and all of that stuff there. They give you a handbook that tells you what you may encounter out in the wilderness when you're doing whatever you have to be doing, whether you're, studying the fishes or the trees or whatever you're researching. And they said, they also tell you what to do if a Sasquatch comes into the campsite. And what they usually do when the Sasquatch comes into a campsite is they'll take the campers and they'll move them to another location that's not being used at that moment. And they'll just close that location off until the Sasquatch does what it's got to do and it leaves. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's it. It's not a big deal. They don't consider the Sasquatches to be dangerous. They don't make a big deal. But if something else comes into your campsite,
like a dog man,
skinwalker, Wendigo, or something like that,
Wendigo,
comes into your campsite, what they'll do is, and they won't. And my nieces, all 3 of them, and they all work in different parts. They're all out west. None of them will discuss anything other than Bigfoot with me. It's like it's taboo. They're not allowed to talk about it. They can talk about Bigfoot, but they can't talk about anything else. But what they will do in a situation like that is they will take all those campers, again, move them to another location. Then they'll close that whole side of the mountain down. They'll rope it off, and they'll say they're doing construction or they're cutting trees down, and they won't allow anybody in there, no day hikes, no nothing, and they'll just put a barrier up around the whole side of the mountain, and they won't let anybody in there until they're sure that this thing is long gone. But with the Bigfoots, the Bigfoots to them are not a big deal. And there also is in these, not the forestry book, but there is another book that's above the forestry book that I was told by an FBI agent. A friend of mine was an FBI agent. He told me long before I knew anything about it. He says, if you're in a federal park and you shoot one of these animals, you shoot one of these creatures, he said, it's a $10,000 fine and 10 years in jail. And there's no negotiating that. That's written in stone. You're going away for 10 years and you're paying them 10 grand to put you away. He says, and that's non-negotiable. He goes, and I'm telling you that because I know you're a researcher. And he goes, but, again, it's a federal law, so it's only in federal parks.
Right.
I don't know about, state parks and stuff like that. What's, if they have anything
It would
on
probably vary state to state, but as far as I understand, in most states now, it is illegal to shoot Bigfoot.
Yeah, I know in Whitehall, New York, which is up in the Adirondacks, the town itself, I don't know about the county, but the town itself has made it illegal to shoot a Sasquatch. Yeah, you'll definitely go to jail if you shoot one in the town, in that town, or kill one in that town. You'll go to jail for sure. Yeah.
Unless you can prove that if you didn't shoot it, you were going to die.
Right. I mean, it's one thing if the thing
so,
is ripping the door off your house and trying to kill
Yeah.
your family. Yeah. But I know they, with the things with the Sasquatches is, I mean, most of the times when they see people, they just turn and walk the other way.
They
don't want to
walk the other way.
They don't want to deal with us for anything. They know we're nothing but trouble.
Yep.
Hunters, I know hunters that have come across them in the woods, and one time one was driven out because I guess he was hunting where this thing wanted to hunt, and it just screamed. He said he never believed in them. Broke my chops for 30 years. Oh, you're crazy. I've been hunting for 30 years. I've never seen anything. Yada, yada, yada. Well, one time he was up in a tree bow hunting with nothing but a bow. And he said he heard something come charging. He was down in a bowl and there was ridges all around him. He said he heard something running towards him that was taking down trees. It sounded like a bulldozer. Damn. He said, and every step it took, the tree he was in shook, and he had no idea what was coming. He's like, what the hell is coming? This thing ran right up to the edge of that ridge line and looked down into that bowl where he was hunting and just screamed at him. And at that point, he climbed out of the tree, he got in his car, and he went home. He's like, I'm done. He hunted that location for 30 years. He never went back. He called me when he got home. He's like, dude, you're not going to believe what happened. I can't believe it myself. It was surreal. It's like, your eyes, your brain can't comprehend what your eyes see because they're not supposed to exist. Monsters are not supposed to exist. And then you see one up on a ridge looking down at you, screaming at you. And again, he said the ridge was a good 300 yards away.
Yeah.
And he said, but the power was so hard, the force of the scream was so forceful, it thought it was going to knock him out of the tree. It just put the fear of God in him, And I had another friend, another neighbor, again, another hunter, 30 years, and all. Didn't believe it. Oh, wow, you're crazy, yada, yada, yada. He's, again, bow hunting. In New York State, when you bow hunt, you're not allowed to carry any firearms. So you can't even carry a sidearm with you, It's just your bow, and that's it. And my friend was in the swamp. There's a swamp up here. It's called the Great Swamp. It's like, 5,000 acre swamp. And he had hunted there his whole life. He was up in a tree. And we had a lot of rain that fall. We had a lot of rain. He said, so the swamp was really high. The water level was really high. He said he was up in a tree and he had a rangefinder on him and he heard splashing. It was like, the hell is splashing around in the swamp? And he pulled out his rangefinder and he looked uprange a couple of 100 yards, he said, and he seen this. He said it had to be 12 feet tall because the water level was 6 feet. He said, and it only came up to his waist.
Yeah.
He said, this thing was kicking the mud up. He goes, I don't know what it was doing. I said, it was looking for turtles. That's what it was doing. It was looking for turtles.
Right.
He said it was walking around the swamp, kicking up the mud. He said, when all of a sudden it stopped, it picked its head up and sniffed and turned and looked right at him. He said the thing was 300 yards away. He said after it had seen him, it turned and it walked through that swamp like me and you walk across a green football field. The
Right.
water didn't even slow him down, he said. Because at that point, I got out of the tree, I got in my truck, and I went home. He said, and I've never hunted that swamp ever again. He said, to this day, my brain can't comprehend what my eyes see.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And I laugh because I took a lot of abuse from these people for 30 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, I'm a hunter. I'm out there. I do muzzle loading. I do black powder. I do this. I do bow. I'm always out in the woods, you know, and I never see anything.
But it's always nice when you can say, I told you so.
You know what? I said it to look, I'm not going to say I told you so, but I told you so, you know, because you guys broke my chops for 30 years, man. And, but it was, you know, like and it's great when you get validation from people who are such staunch non-believers, you know?
It
Dude,
is great.
I was in the woods. I've been in the woods for 30 years. I've never seen anything. Doesn't mean they haven't seen you, you know?
Right.
But when you see him, you know, like I said, the guy who was in the Great Swamp, he didn't even have any, you know, thing didn't even scream at him. It just looked at him, sneezed him, and turned and walked away. And that was enough because he said the thing was so tall, it had to be 12 foot. That was enough to freak him out. The other guy who was down in the bowl, he said, this thing sounded like a bulldozer coming through the woods. He said it was just taking down trees. Boom, boom, boom. So when he got to the edge of that ridge and it screamed down, he said, it felt like I got hit with what you call some kind of wave, sound wave that almost threw him off the tree, threw him out of the tree. He said, that was enough for me, man. He goes, I'm out.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what do you have lined up to do next, man?
Right now, I just finished a couple of investigations. I did 3 investigations up at this hotel up in the Catskill Mountains. It's called the Shanley Hotel. It's been around for hundreds of years. It's got a lot of history. There's a serial killer who lived in one of the rooms when it was a hotel back in like the early 1900s. It was a speakeasy. It has a lot of stuff, and so I've been doing a lot of investigating there. Getting ready once the rain stops. It's been raining here for New York for 3 days now. Once the rain stops and it gets a little bit warmer, I'm going to head up to friend of mine, Chris Reinhardt. He does. He's called Berkshire Mountain Bigfoot. He's got a research center. He works research out of the Berkshire Mountains in New England. And I'm going to go up and hang out with him for a weekend or so. And we're going to do some research. He's got a lot of activity going on up at his location. And he had come down to my location last summer. But we had a weird experience at the sacred site and kind of freaked him out. And, you know, we left. Something had attached to him. It was weird. Paul, the dowsing rods, no matter where I went, always turned back to face him.
Really?
And it freaked him out. It freaked him out because he's not a paranormal guy. He's a Bigfoot guy.
Right.
And we had a lot of paranormal experience happen at the sacred site. And something attached itself to him. And he was cold to the core. He couldn't get warm.
Right.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting out there in the down vest, and it was a beautiful sunny day, you know? And so it just kind of freaked him out. He was like, you know what, dude, I'm ready to go. Let's just go. Actually hooked him up with Cindy, and Cindy's been mentoring him now. So he's learning more and more about the paranormal and how now he's like, he wants to know how everything is connected as well, you know?
For anybody who doesn't know who Cindy is, which most of you don't, she is a psychic, and she can basically tell you how many times you wiped your ass in the morning.
Yeah, she's my team psychic, and I've used her forever, and she's phenomenal. And she actually called me and said, "Who's Chris Reinhardt?" And I was like, "What do you? How do you know Chris? You know, because Cindy's in Arkansas and Chris is in
Yeah.
Connecticut." And she said, "I had a white Sasquatch come to me. He told me he was a king. He was a king shaman or something like that, and I'm supposed to mentor Chris Reinhardt. So I need to talk to Chris." And like, Cindy, she doesn't talk to people who are not dear friends of hers. She doesn't read people.
Yep.
She doesn't want to get involved with any of that
Right.
stuff. She'll just read like people on her team or friends of like us. If we call her, we need something from her. So I said, yes. So I hooked her up with Chris, and we've had this crazy stuff going on between the three of us. We're all seeing the same white Sasquatch, this king shaman. He told me his name was Alaric. And it's weird how it's appearing to Chris in Connecticut, me in New York, and Cindy in Arkansas. And so we got this weird thing going on between the three of us. But I'm going to go up there and then do some investigation up at the Berkshires with him. Then he's going to come back down to New York and he's going to do some more investigation. We're going to try to do the sacred site again and see what happens. And, and then I don't know, I got a cleansing coming up at this really big house. This house is humongous, this rich guy's house. And he's got all kinds of activity going on there. So I got to go there and I got to cleanse that. And like I said, my cousin Sean has been coming with me on all of these investigations. He's a 20-year-old kid. He's into it big time. And he's really enthusiastic, and I'm teaching him the ropes. And, eventually I guess I'll just hand the reins over to him at one point,
Yeah.
But he's really into, and he's whatchamacallit too. He's very sensitive, very sensitive. He'll say stuff when we're out on investigations like that Cindy tells me, but I don't tell anybody else.
Right.
He'll tell me the same thing Cindy says, and I'll look at him like, dude, what made you say that? Where did that come out of left field? And basically I'm just doing the Berkshire Mountains. We're going to do the sacred site. We're going to do the cleansing this summer. And, I'm sure there's going to be more paranormal stuff coming up in the future as well, investigations.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I do appreciate you being here.
No, thank you for having me.
I've been
bro.
looking forward to this. And at some point, who knows, we may have you back on again.
Okay.
And I can always count on this guy.
Yeah, and I got Sean and I did 2 investigations. Just to throw this out. Yeah. We did 2 investigations this summer at the sacred site. One was on Friday the 13th with a full moon, 1% of the moon, and it was a lunar eclipse that night. Okay. And then we followed that up 3 weeks later on October 28th, I believe it was, where there was a solar eclipse, and it was a full moon that night. And we had so much stuff happen those 2 particular nights. It's insane. I didn't want to go there today because it's just too much to get into. But 2 different. I made it a point of going out on those 2 nights because of the different phases of the moon and the different phases of the solar eclipse compared to the lunar eclipse. And I wanted to see how the environment changes. You know what I mean? And I was going out, come hell or high water, by myself if I had to, which is something I never do. But those 2 nights, I think they says that only happens like once every 15 years, that happens on the same month. You know what I mean? So I didn't want to wait another 15 years to get the opportunity. And when I'll tell you off air, all the crazy stuff that happened, it's going to blow your mind, man. It's just insane.
Cool. Okay. Well, that's very cool for now. Thanks. And for Word Peddler Society, this is Paranormal Proximity. Y'all have a good one. Thanks for being here, and we will see you. Bye.